Matt Rifino.
Hello, everybody. I'm Amanda and joined by Kevin and our guest Matt Rifino today on All That Jam, where music has no limits. Matt, welcome back. It's been a little while. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me back. It's a lot of fun coming on the show. I had a blast the last time.
Well, we appreciated it and we love what you do. So we wanted to just take some time and hear maybe what you've been up to and, get into some things like we did in the past, because you bring just so much experience and knowledge about all parts of the industry that we don't often get to hear about. And so, let's just start with what you've been up with lately, whether it relates to the Today Show. I know you do a ton of work also in your own studio. So what's been happening?
2024 has been a pretty crazy year. I started the year knowing I had a couple of things booked for January, and then like January 3rd happened and I had just taken 2 weeks off, and I came back and the phone started ringing, and like all the way through October, it was nonstop this year. And it's been all sorts of different music. This year has been like a really fun year that I appreciate, just because I've gone from doing like 80s retro indie pop records to soul records to jam bands to acoustic to pop to, it's just been like, and I really like that coming from someone, with my background where, I'm throwing artists every day that I necessarily would never listen to or, work with. At Today's Show, this is the schedule. I don't have a say like, hey, that's not a good fit for me. I have to mix it. So even if I don't like it, I have to find, for me, I find a redeeming quality in it. But over the course of 21 years of doing that, I've just learned to appreciate variety. Sort of like when you're listening to music and you go through a phase where you're like, I've been listening to The Dead right now, or I've been really on an 80s kick, and Huey Lewis and the News has been on nonstop, or whatever it is. It's the same thing with mixing. Sometimes, like right now, I've been into like a jazz sort of phase where it's been very minimal. Technically, I'm just letting things be open and natural, where before that, the thing before that I did needed a whole soundscape and a landscape built around it to create the song. So just getting to work on all this different stuff and have different ideas and concepts. So this year's been a lot of fun for that.
So I'm curious, how do you approach this massive variety like you're talking about? Do you have best practices or principles in play for everyone that you're always going to look to? Or is it really approaching the artist as a kind of a unique situation?
It's definitely unique. The more I do this, the more what I did the day before gets thrown out the window, and I just do something completely different. Because when you sit in the same room for a long time and do things over and over, your mind starts to go, how can I do this better? How can I do that better? And, fortunate for me, I get a chance every day to try it again. I might screw up on Monday, but I can try to redeem myself on Tuesday. So, I try to protect the artist first and foremost, whatever it is. Artists spend their career, trying to make their audience happy. I consider myself a creative person, but I'm trying to make the artist happy, not the audience happy. So it's a tougher audience for me. It's a tougher, because it's their songs. They wrote that music. They had to learn their instrument and learn how to play and write these songs and, be in a bus with people for months at a time and do the whole thing. So they care more than any listener who's going to hear it on Instagram or Spotify or wherever. So I'm just trying to make them happy first and foremost. And if something's standing out that I don't think is good for them, I'm going to try to help if I can. But really, I try to let them lead the way, and I'm just a facilitator.
Is that the line between producer and mixer?
Yeah, that's a blurry line these days, with people self-recording. I kind of call it like production mixing almost, because sometimes I get stuff that just needs some massaging because they just didn't have someone to guide them. So it might be something as simple as like that in the bridge, they added all the guitars and then it goes to the last chorus and it's back to 2 guitars. And it's like, well, now we've lost all this build up and we're trying to blow this
Mhm.
up at the end and send it home, but you guys didn't know how to do that on your own. So now I've got to creatively figure out a way to make it feel like something's happening or takes some of the stuff out of the bridge. So the chorus
Right.
feels, different stuff like that that just comes up or, depending on how things are in the stereo field, like half of the chorus has 2 background vocals. So I want to kind of get them maybe in stereo with the lead vocal in the middle, but then the other half only had 1. So now what do I do? Because now we've got this thing, it feels like the chorus jumps up, but for some reason they didn't double it on or
Okay.
anything little weird like that. I'm just making stuff
Right.
up,
No,
but
no, that I could totally see it in my head. I can see the music you're talking about.
and just how the arrangements work and how parts hand off to each other,
Mhm.
from, the verse is, piano, and then it goes to B3 and the chorus or, and just figuring out, like, what works best and just try to help them kinda just massage that last kind of half a mile to the finish line.
Right. And I would imagine, because you just mentioned that like self-production, right, where people are to varying degrees knowledgeable and or also doing their own work, whether it's for online purposes or actual,
A lot of
recordings.
people just record themselves, I mean, it's
Mhm.
just how it is, when I came up in the 90s, like, a budget studio was $50 an hour then, and it had, like, all the stuff you would buy at Guitar Center or Sam Ash in the 90s, that was sort of the thing, and that's, like, the best you could do for $50 an hour. Now, if you spend what you would spend for a couple of days in that studio, you got enough stuff to record your whole band at your house, but that's a steep learning curve. For some, it's easier, for others, it's not. And then you get the varying quality of how stuff comes in. So then maybe it's more like, hey, this song's great and it feels great and I love it, but like the recording lacks. So what can I do to get the sonics there if that's what it needs to be?
Mhm.
Or maybe it's the opposite. Everything sounds real good, but like it's just missing the vibe. So like how can I get the vibe into it? Every project it just varies so much and every artist kind of needs a different helping hand.
Mhm. It's almost like I have this mental image of you kind of in the middle of this huge like Venn diagram of logistics, magic, right? Like that
You
end.
think you're way overthinking it. I I'm throwing
That's
the
typical.
faders up and I just made the hardest thing when you're coming up learning how to do this is you want to do all this technical stuff and you want to learn all the knobs and dials and you want the cool gear and it looks cool and you sit behind a console and it's like a spaceship and you're in control of it, but as you go on, you've spent the time learning all the things and trying all of that stuff and really learning what all that does, and then you sort of just have to forget it. And you have to
Mhm.
sort of put it in the back of your mind somewhere, and it's like grabbing. I haven't thought of another way to say this, and it's dated, but it's like having a Rolodex in your head.
Nice.
And when I need that thing, like when I'm listening to a song and I'm like, it needs that thing. And it's like, I know in my mind how to get that. And that's
Right.
just from like doing 5,000 songs and you
Mhm.
just over and over and over. And then you just don't really think about like what EQ I'm using or any of that stuff. I don't care about that stuff. And I would never like go to an artist and say, hey, did you hear like I use this compressor on your acoustic guitar? Who cares? Now they're listening to their acoustic guitar, they're not listening to the song.
Right.
Mhm.
Right? I just want to hit play and be like, what do you think? Where can we go from here? Does it feel good? Does it feel bad? What is it making you feel? And how can we get you to where you feel like it's the best it can be?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have any, just to get kind of nerdy for a second, have you added any either new gear, and that could be for your home studio too, or kind of things that you've been playing around with since we last talked that you're really digging on?
Yeah, I always am updating and changing and um, you know, with the gear, I've basically spent the last few years building everything up to the point where I've got one thing for everything. So now I'm set up in a way that if you come to the studio to record, like I have enough for everything and it's all set up and plugged in. So if you come in, you can use my drums, you can use your drums, whatever. Either way, it's going to take you longer to set your drums up than it is for me to get a drum sound, because it's already mic'd up, it's already patched, it's already running through the gear, it's already got all the stuff I like there, and I don't have to think about it.
Mhm.
You know, it's already sort of like, okay, let's hear the bass. Okay, great, let's hear the guitar. But by the time they're done warming up, I've already recorded the first pass.
Right.
And they don't even realize that it's happened yet.
Is the list on your website up to date with all this stuff? Because you have a list of equipment on there that's mind-boggling to scroll through.
Yeah, no, it's not. That's missing a lot, actually.
Okay.
I bought a new control surface, which is sort of like the hub. It's like the console.
Right.
It's like my console, only basically it's just a big mouse for Pro Tools. I bought a bunch of equalizers recently. Different plugins and things. I'm always, I'll look at my rack, and if I haven't used something in a long time, I'll sell it. And I'll get something else that I will use.
This is the way.
Yeah, and I've now just kind of equalizers recently. I kind of got to the point where I just don't need anymore. I don't need anything because I have everything that I really love, and it's just at the point where I have it where I want it, and I can quickly. Everything that's set up in this place is like 30 years of me trying stuff and trial and error and making mistakes and breaking things and figuring out what works and what doesn't work and spending a lot of money on stuff that I never used and having to sell it because it was a waste, and just all of that to the point where now I've got everything that's at my fingertips where I don't even have to think about it. And I try to make it where it's almost just like it kind of looks like you wave over everything and it's kind of done quickly without having to think about it. I'd rather be sort of talking to the artist and, maybe do something and just make it more of a fun day and not like a technical thing.
Sure, which that level of comfort, it endears trust. I mean, continuously, I think of the energy that you're bringing, which is, I've got this, like we're connecting, we're engaging with each other, I think is probably huge for any artist. So this is a question I didn't ask you to think about this ahead of time, but I'm just curious if there's kind of a recent example of a time where either you were presented with a situation where you're like, oh, I've got to get super creative to kind of figure this out, or like something like that. Even if we maybe don't know who the artist was, I'd love to know if something's happened recently that you'd want to talk us through.
That's a good question. Sometimes it's, I would say, frustrating for me to, like, I'll do a mix and I send it off and they'll say, we love it. And usually I'll get changes back. And most of my clients, it's a few things, 3, 4, 5 notes I get back, little things. And sometimes people have a ton of notes and I want to support them and take them wherever they want to go. So I'm going to make any change that they want. I never argue. I never say I'm right and you're wrong unless it's something that's like going to be really detrimental to the overall picture of things. So I'll do whatever. But sometimes with artists, when they're spinning the wheel so much, like when it's like, they're making changes at this point that like, it's just making it different. Is it making it better? Like, I don't think so. Or it's, I'm fixing, their mix notes are not about my mix. They're about fixing the stuff that they recorded. And that to me is hard. As far as being creative, like something that really, no, because I just love doing that stuff. Like I want to be as creative as possible. I mean, I literally pay someone to set up the songs for me. So when I come in, all I got to do is hit play and do no technical stuff. So I can just instantly, without having to like already gone through every track and put it on the right thing and like know what it is. I want to hit play and just get my first instinct, what it is. I'm just going to start already like with my template, everything, comes up, nothing's processed, but just everything's open. The faders are open. There's already a rough balance there that my assistants put together. So when I hit play, it sort of sounds like their rough mix, the artist rough mix already. And I can just grab faders and start to think about what I need to do. And then it's just, that's the fun part, because now I'm getting to figure out like how I set the scene, how do I set the landscape for this song? Does the song take place somewhere sunny and warm? Is it cold? Is it, a desert? Is it a wide open landscape? Like what? And then I'm just trying to put the singer there. My first thing is, once I get the rough mix and the balance, and I can A/B between the band's rough mix and my rough mix, and it sounds like theirs, only better already, then I can start to get creative. And the first thing I'm going to do is listen to the vocal on its own and figure out, like, does it need to be in a big place, a small place? Does it need to be right in your face? Does it, and then once I get that vocal, I can start to put everything around that. That usually sets like the stage for me.
Right. So what if it's instrumental?
Depending on what it is, I would start with like the rhythm section, like drums and bass, because that's going to be sort of the loudest stuff. And I know I'm going to need to push some level, but sometimes it goes the opposite of what you think it is. Sometimes you start with the piano, or, and you build around it. Sometimes on jazz stuff, I like to start with the piano, get the piano nice and big. And if I know it's like a trio and that's the main melodic instrument with the vocal, here I want the piano to sort of hug around that voice. So maybe I'll do the voice and the piano first, and then get the bass and the drums in after, because I know really like there's not going to be a ton of low end, and it's going to be more the bass leading, and it's going to be more cymbal and snare leading, and not like rock where it's going to be the kick drum. So it just depends, again, like a rock song, I could start with piano and vocal. If it's a ballad and I want to set that scene first, like I want it to feel like it's this lonely singer on a bar stage somewhere, whatever it is that I envision.
Smoke. You can tell there's smoke in the room.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of what I do when I'm here by myself. I'm creating these stories in my head of what I think it is. And I'm just trying to put that movie together with the faders.
Right. Let me. The last time we talked to you, you mentioned that you were working on a new project with Spafford, and since then, you guys have put it there. A few things have come out. You want to go through a little bit about how that works, because that's different. That's, I guess, sort of they're handing you recordings, but it's also live. So
yeah, we've done a bunch of studio stuff. I mixed their last studio record that they recorded on their own. We've worked on some other studio stuff that has not come out yet, and then I think I've mixed for them, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 live albums between the vinyl and the streaming. Basically they're very good at documenting all their shows, and, everything's like in order, and they send me a link with the files, and same, like anything else, my assistant will download it, load it in, prep it. We do a lot of work goes into those, because I'm trying to make that the best representation of their concerts as I can. And, they play theaters and clubs, and, sometimes it's a bigger stage, sometimes it's a smaller stage. So there's a lot of bleed and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of editing involved in just cleaning up noise. And, remember, they're the type of band where they'll go 15, 20 minutes just jamming easy. So stuff like the vocal mics is just getting all cymbal in there. So before I even start mixing, it's, my assistant's cutting it up and bringing some of that down in between, or cutting out all the noise in between the tom-tom hits, which over a 3-hour show, think how many times Nick hits the tom-toms, and then you got to cut it in a way that feels natural too. You can't just have like, and then it seal up. So there's a lot that goes into cleaning those up, to getting the punch and the definition, and the, I'm always trying to, when I mix live stuff, make it feel like you're in the crowd. Like when I mix in surround sound, you hear a snare drum hit and you're going to hear echo in the back, because that's what you would hear if you went to Madison Square Garden and a drummer starts playing. You're going to hear all, like, when I go to a venue, I'm always listening in the room and just trying to hear how things reflect and echo, and then I try to recreate that. Now, Spafford all the time, there's only so many tracks they can record with their system. So I don't get like 10 audience mics that I can splatter around. So there's sometimes editing involved in, using that ambience and, maybe taking that track and maybe I'll duplicate it and delay it, I'll slide it back. So it feels like the mics were farther back in the room, like maybe by front of house if they were on the stage, or I'll put a delay on there and start to have that flutter around a little bit. So it starts to feel, because if you go into any club and someone cracks a drum or strikes a guitar, you hear it. That's what's natural, but then they get recorded with all these mics that are this close to the source.
Right.
And that, it's like the old, like, the Betty boards, for instance, they've got that great low end and they're full. But when you listen to a Matrix that's got a tape, blended in with it, it tapers and it's got the air, all of a sudden those Betty boards really come to life in a whole new way, because now you're getting the ambience and you're feeling the crowd and you're feeling Jerry's guitar off the PA. And, I'm always trying to recreate that with the live stuff. When Brian goes for a solo, I want it to feel like, oh man, he just turned his amp up a little bit. Or it's towards the end of the show now that I'm mixing and it's a 3-hour show. Like maybe I want to push it a little bit hard at the end, because that's kind of what's happening at the venue, right? The front of house guy, his ears are getting fatigued. The crowd's been yelling and drinking all night. Everything's getting a little bit louder. The PA's getting a little more smushed and crusty sounding. I kind of want to feel that. I want to smell the beer on the floor. So I'm always trying to figure out ways to recreate that.
That's amazing.
Have you played with Atmos?
Yeah. I've been mixing its surround sound every day for 21 years and no one listens to it. I don't know if, more people are concerned with how it's going to sound on my iPad.
Right. We talked about that last time, having to mix for a phone versus a home stereo.
Yeah, so again, like my kids are teenagers, and when I was a kid, I had a stereo, and that was my big prized possession, was your stereo. That was your appliance.
Yep.
Maybe you had a hand-me-down TV, but like that was your thing. Kids don't ask for that anymore. So like, who wants a room full of speakers? You don't see design shows designing speakers into their walls. You don't see, and my concern is like, I would love to mix in Atmos every day. I think it'd be awesome, but who's going to hear it? So now I'm just fighting something I hear in my room that sounds completely different in earbuds. And it's like, why? And, Bob Clearmountain is one of my heroes. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's this legendary mixer who's mixed Springsteen and, just everybody. And he mixed the Roxy Music Avalon record, which is sonically, if you're like a hi-fi guy or any of that, that's like it's like Steely Dan kind of. It's one of those things. And he recently made a post about, check out the Avalon mixes I did the right mixes are finally up on Apple or whatever. And if you really want to hear how it sounded in the studio, buy this system. Well, I looked up the system. It was like $2,800. So like that's a lofty ask for a consumer who doesn't really sit down and listen to music like we used to anyway. Like that's just the reality. That's the truth. $2,800 is a big ask. So how's the format going to survive if you got to spend $2,800 to make it sort of sounded like it did in the room that we mixed in?
Right.
Wow. That's such a good point.
I feel like it's kind of just a gatekeeping thing in a way. It's like the labels trying to figure out like, well, the artists really don't need us anymore. What, can we do? We'll make this really expensive thing where you're going to buy 15 speakers. So you're going to have to pay some guy that can afford 50 grand worth of speakers to mix the thing. And, we've got the budget for that. So, you can't get your song on a playlist on Apple unless you have an Atmos mix. So that doesn't help the independent artists at all, really.
No, and actually, Kev, I want to say, this was a while back, so I'm kind of stretching, but I want to say Alan Evans had very similar things to say, because he was one of the people we talked to who we were able to ask about using Atmos and just what that's like. And same thing. I mean, it's amazing. It's wonderful. But what's the reality? for the end user and their
It's
experience.
for movies and things. You go to a movie theater, it might be cool, you know.
Well, I have a friend of mine, and his parents got a new Mercedes, and it has Atmos in it. Okay, very expensive car. And my friend is not in music. He doesn't do anything that I do. And his parents said to him one day, how come everything sounds so great on Spotify, but when we play Apple Music in the car, it sounds really bad? Well, he went in and figured out that Atmos was turned on. He turned it off on Apple Music, and it sounded great after that. So in an Atmos-equipped car, the Atmos didn't sound as good. So I don't know. I didn't hear it. I don't know. I wasn't there. But
interesting.
It's very interesting. So we'll see. I mean, if it takes off and that's what I got to do, that's, I'll make an adjustment and move some things around and spend a bunch of money on speakers because I guess that's what I'd have to do. I'm just kind of waiting on the sideline because 5.1 never took off, and
it's another beta. We'll call it a beta,
and
like beta or Laserdisc. Laserdisc.
Yeah,
is used for a minute.
1992. Yep. But the other thing is too, people aren't really creating for Atmos yet. It's like they're doing their record in stereo, they're mixing it in stereo, and then the Atmos is an afterthought. I don't want to take someone else's stereo stems and just like make some thing where it's all around speakers. Like, I'd rather, if you want me to mix it in Atmos, like I want all the tracks, I'd want to create from scratch. Like I'm talking about, like I'd love to mix an Atmos and have stuff ricocheting off the ceiling like you were at a venue and be right in there. It just, it's not really a format that I see anyone have, and no one's ever asked me for it. Right. Now, I don't work outside of NBC. I work with a lot of smaller artists and not major label stuff, but no one's once said like, hey, are you going to be doing that soon? Or, hey, I heard this and it sounded so great. Maybe that will change. I don't know. We'll find out.
Well, I have just one quick note as a parent, but also given what you do, speaking of formats, right? Media and format. So I still have, and Kev's heard me say this so many times, but down in my basement, I still have my stereo system, double cassette deck, ability, whatever, the whole thing. Never got rid of any of my tapes. And of course, they're mostly live. But long story short, I have a 12-year-old, and when his friends come over, I will hear them. I have available to them a certain number of shows on cassette and CDs that they can mess around with. That if something happens, it's fine, right? Like, it's not a big deal. Nothing makes me happier than when I hear them learn how to put a cassette in, play it, or even a CD for that matter, because it's the 6 CD, and just they'll be like, "Oh, this sounds so different." Not
is it
better.
The tray that comes out, or is it the pack?
No, it's exactly what you think it is. And so, like, for their ears, right? Because we were just talking about you had that stereo as your possession, your treasure, and it meant everything. And so they're not thinking about it the way that we would have, but just understanding that there's physical copies of things, and the sound that comes out of those same speakers is going to be different. Why? Audience recording, soundboard. Like, we actually sometimes, because they'll ask, why does this sound this way? And it's amazing how, even their ears being so trained to iPads or whatever it may be, streaming things.
You lose a connection with it. I mean, like, even if you had the $139.99 Sony Mega boombox, from the Wiz, and it still moved more air than your little tiny iPad speakers. You still had to put the cassette in the thing and physically turn the knob. And, if you had it on a bookshelf and they had detachable speakers, you had, and it was like a part of what you're set, you were connected to it. You had to go to the store and like spend your money.
Yeah.
And you held on to the album and you looked at it. And my kid has I bought her a turntable with speakers. She doesn't have a whole stereo set up, but she really likes her vinyl. The other day she came home with a Leonard Cohen album and Dylan's New Morning, and I was like, I love you, kid.
Oh wow, nice.
You just nailed it.
That's awesome. Congratulations. You left out.
Yeah, well, we went through the I had to go see Selena Gomez in concert. I had to go see Demi. What was her name? Demi
Lovato.
Lovato. I wanted to say Demi Moore, and I was like, "That is not right, Kevin. You are dating yourself."
Would have gone with you on that one, though. Who knows?
That's funny.
So here's a question for you, and I don't think I'd asked you this last time, but I'm very curious. Is it possible for you, or I guess I should say, how easy is it for you to go to a show? You're such a big live music fan, and I love that. Can you enjoy yourself?
Yes. I just really pick and choose my battles these days because of my hearing. I did so much shows when I was younger. I really, buddies of mine, we would start somewhere in Philly and end up in Vermont, and do little runs like that all the time with different bands. So I've seen so many shows and, I don't know, like 10 or 12 jazz fests and, just tours. And I've had a lot of volume in my life, and that's excluding just the mixing. And when I was younger, when you're younger, it's loud and proud. And, you want to feel it, especially because you're not as good at what you do. So
my ears aren't bleeding.
Yeah, well, it sounds, if your mix is mediocre, it's going to sound better when it's louder, right? So turn it up. I didn't realize, like, oh shit, you can, if you turn this down to like a real low level and you can make it good like that, when you turn it up, it's going to be awesome. So my ears have gotten quite a bit of wear and tear through the years. So I just really pick and choose what shows that I go to.
I have become such a lover of Couch Tour that I can watch the show live from home, run it through my little speakers. They aren't huge, but it sounds okay. But I don't have to physically go anywhere or spend the money to go there.
Yeah, and it's expensive, even like a local show.
110 for Trey.
Yeah,
Trey wants 110.
I wanted to go check out. I don't know if you remember this band from the '90s, the Jayhawks.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and they were playing at a little theater by my house, and like even those tickets were like $60 or something. And then if you add the fees in, and I know they're not making that much money off of it, and it's and then when you add the fees in, especially with these higher price tickets, it's it's another one of those things where I'm not spending $300 a ticket. I'm just.
I'm horrible though. Like first time I went to see Fish, they said $7 at the door, and I was like, $7, man. I don't know if this band's worth $7.
Yeah, I think I paid like $22 or $28 or something.
Yeah.
I'm coming up on 35 years this weekend. It'll be the 35th
Wow.
anniversary. I was 18, so it was many moons ago. A buddy of
That's
mine,
awesome, man.
a buddy of mine convinced me to go see an Allman Brothers cover band with them. And when we went downtown, they were like, "Oh, it's a band called Fish. It's $7." And we were like, "What is
Nice.
Allman Brothers? What are you doing?"
And speaking of funny concert ticket story, remember you used to have to get wristbands and go wait online outside the record store or whatever?
Oh, totally.
Well, when Springsteen came back with the E Street Band in the late '90s, it was a big deal. You had to sign up and get a wristband in the mail. And so it's like Saturday and it's like 6 a.m. and I go to wait online with everyone else from New Jersey. And I just got my first cell phone. And this was like back when they charged you like per minute, just to have it on. So I would keep it off. Someone would page me and then I call them. And so I'm sitting there on this line going, I'm never going to get tickets. He was playing like 20 something shows. Of course I was going to get tickets, but I'm freaked out. I'm not going to get tickets. And so I said, like, I wonder if I just call like a local Ticketmaster office in another state. Like there's not going to be a crazy long wait line. So I called 411 on my cell phone, which was probably like $3.99 then, and I just said, can I have the number for Ticketmaster Miami? And you pressed 1, they charged me like another $1 and it put me right through. And I said, can I get 2 Springsteen tickets for Continental Airlines Arena? And it was my 18th birthday. I said, July 20th? Yeah, sure. No problem. What do you want? Best available. 17th row. Front and center, $65, paid with the card over the phone, and then waited in line and got tickets for 2 more shows anyway.
Smart.
But like you couldn't do that today with the bots and all of that.
No. And that, I think you and I came up in the same era, me being from the shore. Like I remember we knew where all the best secret Ticketmaster outlets were, like in the back of ShopRite. In this one town where like you would know it's going to be the same 20 people online for every single show, right? And the ins and outs and like the strategy, it was so exciting.
I remember
Yeah.
they would put up. I go to the mall, and we had a place called Select a Ticket was the name of the place at our mall, and they had. Remember when you would have the signs that would you just stick into the sign like the white lettering,
Yeah.
and they would put. I remember they would always have at the top left the September dead dates all lined up because they'd be doing like a giant stadium in the fall or whatever it was, and like they'd have all the September shows on. I'd be looking at them like, oh man, I gotta get
Wow.
tickets.
So,
They had a
okay.
there was a mattress store, standalone mattress store that used to be in Baltimore City that had a Ticketmaster. Nobody ever thought to go there. They went to the record company, they went to Hex in the mall. We would go down to the
Perfect.
mattress store.
Different times. That was the Ticketmaster, Ticketron, all of
Well, what
those.
I worked at a club. I'm not going to say what it was, but they had a Ticketmaster. And one Sunday, I'm in there because there's something was going on sale. 5 minutes before the on sale, the owner walks in with this other guy and says, "My buddy's going to run it for you." And so his buddy comes in, who was a scalper, started printing out tickets for himself. The couple people in line, he sold tickets. So when he's done, turns around, hands me $100 and walks out. And I was like, I guess I just been bought off.
That's the best way, the plausible deniability. You did not know at the time.
I had no idea.
So there you go. That'll stand up, if
No
people,
one needs to know anything.
No,
yeah.
no one will ever hear that story.
So, okay. So this makes me curious. Like, have you ever wanted then to be mixing live, like on tour with a band?
No.
Like, no. Okay.
I do
Big
not
answer.
want to be responsible for that many people's eardrums.
Understood.
I don't like that type of volume. I don't want to be in control of that type of volume. I don't want to sleep on a bus. I like my own bed at night.
Mhm.
That's
But you
not the
do
life for me.
I mean, for today's show, that's live. Wouldn't you
Yeah,
call
but
that live?
I'm in a controlled environment, I'm
Mhm.
old. I'm white gloving it. I'm not like setting up stuff. I'm not rolling stuff off the back of a truck and
I'll
doing
be at
all.
the catering tent. Come get me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but I have no interest. Maybe if I didn't have a family and I was 22 years old, maybe. But I'm a studio rat. I got my first gig at a studio when I was like 14 years old. I don't know
Mhm.
any different. This is
Being
just like where I'm comfortable. This is where I know how to be human. Here.
like,
Right.
Um,
Right. No, I get that. I mean, it's two totally different worlds. Like a good buddy of mine, actually someone, if you don't know, I'd love to make an introduction, but did live sound on tour for jam bands for like 20 years and now runs all the sound at the Capitol Theater.
oh, great, awesome.
Lives in like 10 minutes from there. And after being on the road for decades, literally, right? And loving that lifestyle, even that switch it's been a process because it's
I bet.
just, yeah, I mean, although now that is set in, being in the same place every night, regardless of who the artist is, that consistency is now like much appreciated. But at the time, that was kind of scary to go from different room every night, just being
Yeah.
used to that kind of chaos. And then it was almost like, well, wait, is this going to be boring now? And it's not. But
Yeah.
so I guess it goes both ways.
A lot of guys get on the road and they can't get off, and that's what it is. Or it's for me, I didn't want to do it because a lot of times, especially when you're younger, money on the road is better than it is in the studio.
Mhm.
And like you don't want to get addicted. I didn't want to get addicted to the money, or I just, for me, I was more interested in making records. I love live music when I can go see it and I get to take something away with it. But when I create, I want to create something that's tangible. I mean, I guess you can't really hold these days because it's Spotify, but something that lasts,
Mhm.
and I kind of, obviously, as no matter what you do in life, as you do it longer and longer, you get better. And what you did early on in your career, you think is not as good. But I still like to go back and listen every once in a while and see what I was doing. And sometimes I think, oh, not bad. Sometimes I think, oh man, that's bad. It just depends. But um, it's an evolution,
Mhm.
and you can kind of keep track, I guess, better than if it was just a show and at the end of the night it's gone into the and it,
Do
you're
you
set.
do you think it's easier to do the same band every night or work the same room every night?
Um, you know, I guess in a way, I kind of do a lot of both, sort of in different ways. Working the same room every day, like I've done at the Today Show for 20 plus years. It's good and it's bad. You take everything as far as you want to take it. I've pushed it as far as it can go. I've gone through every nook and cranny and tried to figure out the best way to do anything. And it sort of can be frustrating sometimes because you're like, well, I know I can only do so much with this set of circumstances, or I can't change this, or I can't change this. But at the same time, I've had a few thousand chances to get better at it. So there's a growth with it that you get in
Right.
learning.
Mhm.
I work with a lot of the same bands over and over again, never really day after day after day. But a lot of my clients are repeat clients or artists on the Today Show, who I've mixed 10 times or more through the years. It's, their crew, their people. It's comfortable. The band I had today, Dan and Shay, they're like a country band, and
Mhm.
I've mixed them probably like between 8 and 12 times, and on the tree lighting and on this show and all sorts of different stuff. And
Mhm.
we know each other. Everyone's great. So it's easy.
Yeah.
And then I know their sound, so I know what to expect, and they know what I do. So it's really, it's fun that way. I like variety. Like I said earlier, I
Mhm.
really enjoy, and they say, like, a lot of guys say you should focus, have a thing that you fall into, like focus on one type of music and you'll do better. I couldn't do that. I would start to do the same things probably over and over. When I hear different type of music, it gets me motivated to do something totally, totally different.
Mhm. I love
And
that.
that's
Yeah.
fun. That's like the fun part, to have to readjust, and sometimes you have to catch yourself. You've been working on hard rock stuff for a week, and it's kind of loud and balls to the wall, and then you get a singer songwriter, and like the first pass of the first mix you do, it's like too aggressive because you've been in like hard rock world, and
Right.
you got to be like, oh man, all right, let me readjust. I do something I do to kind of keep perspective is I'll always keep a TV on in the
Okay.
lounge, or Sirius radio or something in the background, or a podcast with talking heads, something with people
Mhm.
talking, because I might get up to go get a cup of coffee, and you're in your own little world behind the speakers, and you sometimes take things too far. Maybe I made the vocal too bright, but then I walk by to go to the bathroom or get a cup of coffee, and I hear that talking head, and it sort of balances my ears out again, where I'm like, oh,
Palate cleanser.
yeah, he's not so
It
sibilant. So
is
I come back
great.
in, and then I hit play, and I'm like, oh, this is really bright, or this is really dark, or whatever, and then I
What
can
was I
readjust.
thinking?
Yeah,
That that makes so much sense. It's like the coffee bean trick when you've been, at a store and you got all the perfume, whatever, you have to reset somehow, I guess, at some point.
yeah, yeah. It's funny. My assistant at NBC never knew why I always had the news or something on in the background.
Mhm.
Like, after all these years, he said to me today, he goes, I never understood how you could listen to the news and mix at the same time. And I said, I'm not even like listening to it. I don't even know what they're talking about. Every once in a while, it's just a reference for me to sort of like get my head refocused in reality. Oh, I never knew that. It's just people
Yeah.
think of things different ways, Yeah.
The more you know.
So, do you have anything lined up for the new year that you could share with us that you're excited about?
Um, I don't know what I can share these
Or
days.
anything that's just come out. What's the
Yeah,
most
yeah,
recent
same.
stuff?
Yeah.
Throw out some.
I just did. I have to look here. I just had I did a bunch of singles for this group, Chris Batten and the Woods.
Okay.
That just came out. They're like kind of got a Jersey rock and roll sort of vibe to them. I'm looking on Spotify right now. I work with a producer named Lee Turner, and he's Darius Rucker's musical
Okay.
director, and he goes on tour and plays keys and like all acoustic guitar and steel and all that stuff for Darius and for Hootie and the Blowfish, and he produces a lot of artists in Nashville. So we're always doing like a constant stream of work. Um,
Mhm.
I just did this really cool, actually, you she's not like you wouldn't know her as she is, but his wife, actually, Tiffany, just did a who was the song? It was so great. Tower of Power song that they covered.
What is hip?
So Very Hard to Go.
So Very Hard to Go. Okay.
And
Nice.
I got to do like this awesome 70s, just
Nice.
that vibe, you know what I mean? So I kind of got to lean into just that sound for a day, and that was a lot of fun. I'm trying to think, what did I just finish up? I did a blues record that's not out yet. With this guy Bob Lanza, who, kind of a cool story. His brother Jerry, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, when I was 16 years old, took me into his blues band. So I was playing in a blues band with a bunch of 40-something-year-old guys. And then after I joined the band, he had my father join the band on bass. So from the time I guess I was 16 to 22, I was gigging in a blues band, a few nights a week, doing that. So Bobby reached out to me. I hadn't talked to him in a few years, and we ended up doing a whole record together. And we used some of the guys, some of the rhythm section from Fabulous Thunderbirds are on it.
Nice.
So I don't know when that's coming out. I haven't talked to him in a couple of months. We finished that maybe at the end of October.
You'll be calling him later.
Yeah.
Help that out, man.
Yeah. All in due time. I've got a bunch of stuff that's just not out yet.
Right.
This year's been a year of like, I did a lot of work. It just, for some reason, it's taken its time to get out, and I never know what I'm supposed to say or not supposed to say.
Right.
I mean, I can tell you that I'm constantly, there's always a constant stream of Spafford stuff going through. I'm going to be starting a record with this jam band from Long Island, Dysfunctone.
Oh, love them.
Yeah. We're gonna be doing that. I think like right after the new year. I think it's like the 4th or the 10th or something. We're gonna start that.
Cool.
I'm doing an indie rock record starting in the beginning of February with a really great female singer. I like working with female singers a lot. So if you guys are listening, I'm a big fan. I've been really fortunate to just like work with a lot of great female vocalists, and I just love mixing that, whatever it is. I don't even care what the genre is, just the powerful voice, and just being able to showcase that and put that out there.
Do you know Laura Nero?
Why does that sound familiar?
I have a thing for Laura Nero. She wrote Stone Soul Picnic that Bette Midler did, and or Streisand did, or one of them, and Eli's Coming, the Three Dog Night did. She wrote that. Her New York Tenderberry album sonically is just the most beautiful thing, and most of it's just her on piano singing, but the range of the whisper to the scream is just, it's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I like that sort of stuff.
Big fan. Yeah. My ex-wife was a singer, and I could never get her to go out and like do it full time. I was like, you should be in a band.
It's so hard
every weekend.
Yeah.
Well, she didn't work at the time. We just had kids. I would have stayed home with the kids. I mean,
I love the support for that. I mean, that's a great thing,
Yeah.
Right. What better time to do it?
When you have kids. Yeah, go on the road, sure.
Right. I got this. So we're probably going to have to wrap this up in a few. Is there anything that you want to throw out, or anything that you want to mention for the last few minutes?
Actually, we're working on right now. I'm working with this great videographer, Sawyer. And we're trying to put together a little video series over here at the studio. And what we're sort of looking to do is we're going to call it Saturday Sessions. And what we want to do is, the way that, like I was telling you guys, that I set this studio up was so it can be like that before that you're recording. So we really wanted to like showcase that. So we want to do a thing with artists where you come in on a Saturday morning, we start with nothing recorded, but by the end of the day, we've got a full song finished. And the whole thing's going to get documented and cut down into like little sort of media-sized clips, and then like a full YouTube thing. And, I don't want to get like really technical with it. It's just more about creating and and that, and then we might do like a little companion video with it called like Mix Down Mondays,
Okay.
where I might not get so technical with it, but just more like maybe discuss, hey, this synth turned out to be sort of the signature sound of this song, and here it is, and we kind of put this space around it, or something that goes with the arrangement or the vibe of the song, not so much like set your EQ to this frequency and turn the dial.
Nice.
So yeah, if any artists are interested in doing that, we're sort of listening to different demos right now to see who we want to bring in to
Right.
do that. So if
So,
anyone,
they have to have the sketch of the song. You can't have you aren't going to bring a band in and say, all right, you don't have anything. Go ahead, make something.
unless it's someone that I've worked with that I know can do that, but also we kind of wanted to work with different people that we'd never worked with. Like we're going to do a couple of test runs with artists that I've worked with in the past, but
Right.
we really wanted to see what it would be like to kind of like just meet and get you in and
Yeah.
bring you into the vibe and just see what happens and what we can kind of create with that initial instinct and gut feeling, and just see if every Saturday that we do it, that we can tackle a song so when they walk out the door, this thing is everything is done, all we got to do is mix it.
Nice.
Right.
So,
Oh man, I can think of a couple bands that I know that are based generally in that area who would probably have the great mindset for that, because like you
yeah,
have to
if you
kind of
want to
come
connect
in.
us, that's the other thing. It's
Yeah.
like you start looking at schedules and the band's like, well, we're from 5 hours away, but we're going to be over there on this date. It's like, oh, we're not available this date. So it's that scheduling aspect of it is becoming harder.
Scheduling. It's our
setting it
favorite
up.
thing. We love scheduling.
Yeah, right. We had a couple of redos.
I really like that idea. I think that
Yeah, I
awesome.
feel like I want to sick my favorite band, Space Bacon, on you.
Oh, dude, I love those guys. I'd love to work with those guys.
That would be fantastic. I
Dude,
think they
like,
would probably be into it. They'd totally be into it.
I was
yeah,
gonna say they're one of those, that just the energy
I
they
love
have.
them though. They are such a great sound,
Yeah.
so much fun.
yeah, and they're consistent.
Yeah.
Those guys just consistently play and consistently put stuff out, and it's been like years now. I mean, they've been a while.
Yeah,
I think the first time we talked to them was when COVID for like they were young then. That was it's been almost 5 years since COVID, which should blow your mind because I feel like it was yesterday still.
I know, and I just had it, so
it was yesterday.
And I don't want to get political, but this was the first year I didn't get the vaccination. It was the first time I got COVID, so I don't know. I think I'm going back to the vaccination next year.
There you go.
Right on. No, I hear that. Oh, it is always so awesome to talk to you, and we just appreciate what you do for us. I mean, as the listeners and the fans, thank you.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. It's always a blast talking to you guys. We always get into some crazy stuff. It's fun.
Yeah, and everybody out there watching, make sure you like, subscribe, check out our other videos. We've been doing a holiday gift guide with some artists from the scene who have Etsy stores and various and whatnot. And remember, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long. Hang out for a second, and we'll see you soon. Okay, I gotta. Beautiful. I gotta start there. It's like it gives you like 4 seconds.
Yeah.
I need to like figure out when to hit it in order to stop talking. So
what do you use? Are you just using the app itself, or do you run it through something else?
Yeah, it's an online studio. It's Streamlabs is what we switched to. It's an app called Melon is what I found, but okay. So it's all just done live in this cloud, so to speak.
Because I've been trying to set up without having the videographer come in, like an easy way to be able to.
You can definitely record in here. You can definitely go in and record.
I got cameras all over. I just been trying to figure out an easy way to do it, and I found this little switcher thing called the 810.
Right.
And it's just like USB in, and then it's got, you can, depending on what size you buy, anywhere from 4 to like 12 HDMI ins. So you could just plug in cameras, and then it just got buttons. You can select in
Right.
real time, like you can cut the things, and you can use their software, and you can make like picture in picture and have it like, it's like a little switcher. So I've been thinking about getting that so I could just put it on my console and like hit the button and be live, you know?
Yep.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
This basically, you have to run this into YouTube or
Yeah.
Facebook or something, but you could also go in here and just record and then download the recording and use
And then,
that as raw
okay, oh, that's
material.
cool. Yeah, I'm gonna check that out. I'm still trying to figure it out. Video is like a, you know, very hard learning curve for me
Yeah,
for some
you need
reason.
anything, just reach out to us.
Thanks,
I'll tell
man.
you
I
what I know.
appreciate it.
My buddy Travis from Wook Plus does video. Like when you see ads on TV, that's what he does.
Oh, cool.
Or like the promos for NBC and stuff like that.
Oh,
So,
nice. Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to figure this out. We're gonna see. I got the guy coming in tomorrow. All the stuff that we're gonna do for the video series, he's just like recording into a card, you know, of the, all the and then he's gonna edit it. I'm trying to get something that's simple for me, being a idiot, where like I could just turn it on, hit stream, and then go, okay, here's a shot of me at my console. Here's a screenshot of my Pro Tools screen. This is what I'm working on, and then be able to play my mic and what's coming out of my Pro Tools system. So you can hear, and just getting that all to work, even with the separate computer setup and everything. I don't know. It's just like I get it all working, and then it stops working.
Right.
And
well, if you want help, you need someone to play with it, just reach out to us.
Thanks. I
I'll even
appreciate
come
it.
on to do it something like this, so we can try to work through it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for all you do.
Yeah, man. Send me a thing when you're gonna put it out, and I'll share it and do all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Amanda can send you a link. It already went live, so we already went live.
Oh,
it's on YouTube now. Yeah. So.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. All right. Take care, guys. We'll talk.
All right.
To you soon.
Amanda, we'll talk soon. I know you got something else.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Guys.
Bye, guys.